The stars looked peaceful that morning. Too peaceful. Commander Sarah Mitchell stood on the observation deck of Kepler Station, watching the distant sun cast its golden light across the agricultural domes below. Her coffee was still hot in her hands. She had no idea that in 15 minutes everything would end. Kepler Station was humanity's pride. 2.3 million people called it home. Families lived here. Children went to school here. Scientists studied alien plants in the greenhouses. Engineers built new ships in the orbital yards. It was supposed to be safe. The Galactic Concordat had promised peace. Humanity had believed them. Sarah's daughter Emma was in school right now, probably learning about the different alien species in the galaxy. Her husband Tom worked in the mining section, extracting rare minerals from the nearby asteroids. Life was good. Humanity had finally found its place among the stars. The first explosion came without warning. One moment Sarah was sipping her coffee. The next moment the entire station shook violently. Alarms screamed throughout the corridors. Red emergency lights flashed in every direction. Sarah dropped her coffee cup and ran toward the command center. "What's happening?" she shouted into her communicator. "Ships! Unidentified ships! They're firing on us!" The voice belonged to Lieutenant Chen from Tactical. He sounded terrified. Sarah reached the command center and froze. The main screen showed dozens of massive warships surrounding Kepler Station. They were unlike anything in the Concordat database. Dark, angular, covered in sharp edges like the shells of giant insects. These were Zetharian Empire vessels. Why are they attacking? Captain Rodriguez demanded. "We have a treaty." Send a distress signal to the Concordat. But it was already too late. The Zetharian ships fired again. And again. Their weapons were plasma cannons that melted through the station's shields like they were paper. Entire sections of Kepler Station exploded into space. Thousands of people died in seconds. The agricultural domes shattered, exposing families to the vacuum of space. Sarah tried to reach her family. "Emma, Tom, can you hear me?" Static. Only static answered her. The command center shook again. Parts of the ceiling collapsed. Captain Rodriguez was crushed under falling debris. Lieutenant Chen screamed as fire consumed the tactical station. Sarah stumbled toward an escape pod, but another explosion knocked her down. Through the smoke and chaos, she saw the truth on the flickering screens. The Zetharians were not just attacking military targets. They were destroying everything. The schools, the hospitals, the residential areas. This was not a war. This was extermination. Sarah managed to crawl into an escape pod. As it launched into space, she looked back at Kepler Station. It was breaking apart, splitting into massive chunks of twisted metal and flame. She could see tiny figures being sucked into space. Some of them might have been people she knew. Some of them might have been her family. The pod's emergency beacon activated automatically, but Sarah knew no help would come in time. She watched through the small window as the Zetharian fleet finished its work. They fired until nothing remained but debris. 2.3 million lives. Gone. Just like that. Sarah's pod drifted in space for 3 days before a rescue ship found her. She was one of only 47 survivors. Everyone else was dead. Her daughter. Her husband. Her friends. Her entire life had been erased in less than an hour. Back on Earth, the news spread like wildfire. People could not believe it. Humanity had been peaceful. They had followed all the Concordat rules. They had made friends with dozens of alien species. Why would the Zetharians do this? The answer came from the Zetharian Empress herself. She broadcast a message to the entire galaxy. Her voice was cold and mechanical, translated by computers into human language. Humanity grows too fast. They learn too quickly. They make too many alliances. We have eliminated a potential future threat. This is simply practical strategy. Other species should take note. The galaxy responded with silence. The Galactic Concordat held an emergency session. Hundreds of alien species gathered to discuss the massacre. Surely they would demand justice. Surely they would punish the Zetharians, but they did not. Ambassador Williams stood before the Concordat assembly, his voice shaking with rage and grief. They murdered millions of innocent people. Children, families. This was not war. This was genocide. The Concordat must act. The response came from the Concordat Prime Speaker, a tall crystalline being that spoke in musical tones. We understand humanity's pain. We offer our deepest sympathies. However, the Zetharian Empire is powerful. They have been part of the Concordat for thousands of years. We cannot risk a larger war. We must seek diplomatic solutions. Diplomatic solutions? Williams could not believe what he was hearing. They just killed 2 million humans. We will form a committee to investigate, another alien representative said. We will write a strongly worded resolution of disapproval. We will impose minor trade restrictions, but we cannot go to war. The truth was clear. The Concordat was afraid. The Zetharians were too powerful, too dangerous. No one wanted to risk their own people to defend humanity. The other species would rather sacrifice human lives than face the Zetharian military. Ambassador Williams returned to Earth with the bitter news. The Concordat had abandoned humanity. They were alone. Admiral Elena Vasquez watched the reports from her office at Earth's military headquarters. She had lost her daughter at Kepler Station. Her 3 grandchildren, too. The pain was like a knife in her heart. But beneath the pain was something else. Something cold and hard and absolutely furious. She called an emergency meeting of Earth's military command. Generals, admirals, scientists, and politicians gathered in a secure bunker deep beneath the surface. The mood was dark. The Concordat has failed us, Vasquez said quietly. They will not help. They will not fight. They expect us to accept this massacre and move on. What choice do we have? General Park asked. The Zetharian Empire has hundreds of warships. We have maybe 30 vessels that could fight in deep space. They would crush us. Vasquez stood up. Her eyes were hard as steel. Then we build something they cannot crush. We activate Ghost Protocol. The room went silent. Everyone knew about Ghost Protocol. It was a secret program that had been running for years. A program that developed weapons and technology far beyond what humanity had shared with the Concordat. A program that prepared for the day when humanity might need to stand alone. Ghost Protocol was meant to be a last resort, someone objected. They killed our children, Vasquez said. Her voice was soft, but everyone heard the rage beneath it. They wanted to teach us our place. Instead, they are about to learn why you never corner a predator. We will show them what humanity truly is. She pressed a button on the table. A holographic image appeared. It showed a massive warship under construction in a hidden shipyard far beyond Neptune. The ship was beautiful and terrible at the same time. This is the UESS Retribution, Vasquez said, and it is almost ready. The meeting ended with a unanimous vote. Humanity would withdraw from the Concordat. They would activate Ghost Protocol. They would build an army, and they would make the Zetharians pay for every single life lost at Kepler Station. The galaxy thought humanity would grieve and then forget. They thought humans were just another weak species that would accept their place in the cosmic order. They were very wrong. 6 months passed since the massacre at Kepler Station. The galaxy watched humanity retreat into silence. Most alien species assumed humans were simply grieving. Some felt pity. Others felt relief that humanity had learned their place. The Zetharians felt satisfaction. They had eliminated a potential threat before it could grow dangerous. None of them knew what was really happening. Deep in the Oort cloud, at the very edge of Earth's solar system, a massive structure floated in the darkness. It was called Forge Omega. No one outside Earth's military knew it existed. Even most humans did not know about it. Forge Omega had been under construction for 20 years, built slowly and secretly, preparing for a day that everyone hoped would never come. That day had arrived. Captain Marcus Chen stood on the command deck of the UESS Retribution and felt a mixture of awe and dread. The ship was 5 kilometers long, shaped like a spearhead aimed at the heart of the galaxy. Its hull was made from materials that absorbed sensor waves instead of reflecting them. Its engines could push it to speeds that would tear apart most other vessels. Its weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Final systems check complete, reported Commander Okonkwo from the engineering station. She was a brilliant woman from Nigeria, who had lost her entire family at Kepler Station. Like most of the crew, she had volunteered for this mission knowing she might never return home. All weapon systems are operational. The quantum stealth field is ready. The neural mesh is synchronized, Chen nodded. The neural mesh was perhaps the most radical technology on the ship. Every crew member had received implants that connected their minds to the ship's artificial intelligence. They could think and react as one organism. It gave them reaction times far faster than any normal crew. It also meant they shared thoughts and emotions in ways that were uncomfortable at first. Chen could feel his crew now. 3,000 minds connected to his own. He felt their determination, their anger, their grief, and underneath it all, their fear. Not fear of dying, fear of what they were becoming. "Captain Admiral Vasquez is calling," the communications officer announced. The main screen flickered to life. Admiral Vasquez appeared, looking older than she had 6 months ago. The loss of her family had carved deep lines into her face, but her eyes were still sharp and focused. "Captain Chen, is the retribution ready?" "Yes, Admiral. All systems are operational. The crew is trained and prepared." Vasquez was quiet for a moment. "You understand what we are asking you to do. This is not a normal military operation. We are sending you to destroy an empire. The Concordat will condemn us. Other species will fear us. We may never be able to go back to the way things were." Chen thought about his sister. She had been a teacher at Kepler Station. She had loved working with children from different species, teaching them about Earth's history and culture. The Zetharians had killed her while she was reading stories to a classroom of 5-year-olds. "They started this war, Admiral. We are just going to finish it." Vasquez allowed herself a small, cold smile. "Good. Your first target is the Zetharian supply depot at Hadron's Edge. It supports their entire military presence in this sector. 40 warships defend it. Planetary shields protect the facility. Intelligence says it is impossible to attack successfully." "Nothing is impossible, Admiral. Not anymore." "Good hunting, Captain. Make them remember Kepler Station." The transmission ended. Chen turned to his crew. Through the neural mesh, he could feel their readiness. They were like a sword that had been sharpened for 6 months. Now it was time to strike. "All hands prepare for departure. Activate quantum stealth. Plot a course for Hadron's Edge." The Retribution powered up its engines. The quantum stealth field activated, bending light and sensor waves around the ship. To any observer, the ship simply vanished. Even the most advanced sensors in the galaxy would detect nothing but empty space. The journey to Hadron's Edge took 3 weeks. The crew trained constantly. They practiced attack patterns. They studied Zetharian psychology. They learned the weaknesses in Zetharian ship designs, and they learned to work as one mind through the neural mesh. Chen spent his nights reviewing intelligence reports. The Zetharians were an ancient species. They had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years through military might and ruthless efficiency. They were insectoid with hard exoskeletons and compound eyes. They communicated through chemical signals and sound. Their society was rigidly hierarchical, with the Empress at the top and soldier drones at the bottom. But humans had discovered something interesting. Zetharian psychology was predictable. They followed patterns. They valued order and efficiency above creativity. They could not understand the human ability to think in unconventional ways. This would be their weakness. The Retribution arrived at Hadron's Edge and took position in the shadow of a dead moon. Chen studied the tactical display. The Zetharian supply depot was massive, bigger than most cities. 40 warships patrolled in precise formations. Planetary shields covered the facility in layers of protective energy. "Analysis complete," Okonkwo reported. "The shields have a refresh rate of 0.03 seconds. If we time our attacks perfectly, we can slip weapons through during the refresh cycle. The patrol patterns are mathematical," the tactical officer added. "They repeat every 17 minutes. We can predict their positions exactly." Chen smiled. The Zetharians were efficient, but they were also predictable. Humans were neither efficient nor predictable. That was their advantage. Prepare plasma lance arrays. Load singularity torpedoes. Begin psychological warfare broadcasts on Zetharian neural frequencies. The attack began. The Retribution dropped its stealth field for exactly 2 seconds. In that time, it fired 30 plasma lances at the Zetharian patrol ships. The lances were concentrated beams of superheated plasma that cut through shields and armor, like they were not there. 6 Zetharian ships exploded before their sensors even registered the attack. At the same moment, the Retribution broadcast a signal on frequencies that Zetharians used for chemical communication. The signal triggered instinctive fear responses in the Zetharian brain. It was the equivalent of smelling a predator. Every Zetharian on every ship suddenly felt overwhelming terror. The patrol formations broke apart in confusion. Ships collided with each other. Commanders shouted contradictory orders. The perfect military efficiency collapsed into chaos. The Retribution reappeared behind the depot and fired singularity torpedoes. These weapons created tiny black holes that lasted only milliseconds. But in those milliseconds, they tore through the planetary shields and the facility beyond. Entire sections of the depot imploded into nothing. Chen watched the battle through the neural mesh. He could feel his weapons officer's satisfaction as each shot found its target. He could feel his navigator's focus as the ship moved through impossible angles. He could feel 3,000 minds working as one perfect weapon. The Zitharians tried to fight back. They launched missiles and fired energy weapons. But the retribution was always one step ahead. It moved like a dancer, graceful and deadly. Every attack pattern the Zitharians used had been studied and countered. The humans knew what the Zitharians would do before they did it. 37 minutes after the battle began, it was over. 40 Zitharian warships were destroyed. The supply depot was a burning ruin, and the retribution had not taken a single hit. Chen ordered one final action. The ship broadcast a message across all frequencies in every language the galaxy knew. This is the UESS Retribution. This is for Kepler Station. We are just getting started. To the Zitharian Empire, we are coming for you. To the Concordat, you abandoned us, so do not interfere. To every species watching, humanity remembers its dead. The Retribution engaged its stealth field and vanished into the darkness of space. Across the galaxy, the message was received. Intelligence agencies analyzed every word. Military commanders studied the tactical data. Politicians held emergency meetings. Everyone had the same question. What had humanity built? And what else were they capable of? The Zitharian Empress received the news in her throne room on Zethar Prime. For the first time in her long life, she felt something she did not have a word for. Humans called it fear. The news of Hadron's Edge spread across the galaxy like fire. Every species with communication technology heard about the impossible battle. 40 Zitharian warships destroyed, a major military depot reduced to debris, and the attackers had taken no damage at all. The Concordat called emergency sessions every day. Representatives from hundreds of species argued about what to do. Some wanted to condemn humanity for breaking the peace. Others were secretly pleased to see the Zitharians humbled. But mostly everyone was afraid. We must contact Earth immediately, insisted Ambassador Varix, a floating jellyfish-like being from the oceanic worlds. We must negotiate. If humanity has this kind of military power, we need to understand their intentions. Their intentions are clear, replied Ambassador Williams, the human representative. He stood alone at his podium, representing a species that no longer trusted the Concordat. The Zitharians murdered millions of our people. We asked for justice. You gave us empty words, so we will take justice ourselves. This could start a war that consumes the entire galaxy, the Prime Speaker warned. Williams looked around at the assembled aliens with cold eyes. The war already started. When the Zitharians attacked Kepler Station, you just chose not to fight in it. The Concordat voted to stay neutral. They would not help humanity, but they would not help the Zitharians either. Every species would protect their own interests and hope the storm passed them by. The Zitharian Empire did not wait for diplomacy. Empress Crixella ordered a massive military mobilization. She pulled ships from a dozen sectors and assembled a fleet of over 200 warships. Their mission was simple: find the human ship and destroy it. But finding the retribution was impossible. The quantum stealth technology made it invisible to every sensor the Zitharians possessed. The ship could be anywhere. It could be watching them right now. Admiral Thexfor commanded the Zitharian hunting fleet. He was an old warrior who had fought in hundreds of battles. He had never known defeat. The loss at Hadron's Edge stung his pride. He swore he would restore Zitharian honor by bringing the humans to heel. Deploy sensor nets across all approaches to Zitharian space, he commanded. Increase patrols by 300%. Use civilian ships as bait. When the humans attack, we will be ready. But Captain Chen had no intention of attacking where the Zitharians expected. The retribution appeared in the Crimson Nebula, a region of space filled with glowing red gas and young stars. Here, the Zitharian 7th Fleet was conducting training exercises. 25 capital ships and 50 support vessels, all far from any reinforcements. They feel safe here, Okonkwo observed. The nebula interferes with most sensors. They think no one can find them. They are not thinking like humans, Chen replied. We do not need sensors when we can calculate their position from supply ship. Movements and communication intercepts. The attack was even more devastating than Hadron's Edge. The retribution struck from within the nebula itself, using the gas clouds as cover. It fired plasma lances that appeared from nowhere, cutting Zetharian ships in half. It launched singularity torpedoes that created brief black holes, consuming entire vessels. The Zetharians tried to retreat, but Chen had predicted their escape routes. The retribution appeared ahead of them, behind them, beside them. It was like fighting a ghost that could be everywhere at once. Admiral Thexfor's flagship received the distress signal too late. By the time his hunting fleet arrived at the Crimson Nebula, the 7th Fleet was gone. Only debris remained floating in the red clouds like scattered bones. And another message, broadcast on all frequencies. For Kepler Station. More will follow. The next target was a Zetharian cloning facility on the ice world of Frostholm. This was where the Empire bred its soldier drones, creating thousands of warriors in artificial wombs. It was also where they kept political prisoners and slaves from conquered species. Chen studied the facility layout for days. The cloning facility was deep underground, protected by layers of rock and military installations. A frontal assault would be suicide. But Chen was not planning a frontal assault. The Retribution approached Frostholm in stealth mode. Instead of attacking the planet, it began transmitting a signal. The signal contained detailed information about the facility's location, the number of prisoners inside, and the exact time humanity would strike. The signal was sent to every slave colony in the region, to every conquered species, to everyone who had suffered under Zetharian rule. "Are you sure about this?" Okonkwo asked. "We are revealing our attack plan." "Yes, because this is not just about vengeance anymore. This is about showing the galaxy that the Zetharians can be beaten." 2 days later, the Retribution attacked, but it did not attack alone. Ships from a dozen different species appeared alongside it. Most were civilian vessels, barely armed. Some were old freighters, some were mining ships. But their crews had one thing in common. They had all lost someone to Zetharian cruelty. The battle for Frostholm was chaotic and desperate. The Zetharians fought hard to protect their facility, but they were overwhelmed by sheer numbers and by the fury of people who had nothing left to lose. The Retribution carved a path through the orbital defenses. The other ships followed, landing troops on the surface. Chen watched as freed slaves emerged from the underground facility, blinking in the sunlight they had not seen for years. Some had been prisoners for decades. Among the freed prisoners was a human scientist named Dr. Yuki Tanaka. She had been captured 3 years ago while studying xenobiology near Zetharian space. The Zetharians had forced her to work on biological weapons. She was thin and scarred, but her eyes were still bright with intelligence. "Thank you," she whispered when Chen met her in the medical bay. "I thought no one would come." "Humanity does not abandon its own," Chen replied. "Not anymore." Dr. Tanaka had valuable information. She had been forced to study Zetharian biology. She knew their weaknesses. She knew which frequencies caused them pain. She knew which chemicals disrupted their communication. She knew how to hurt them. "They are not invincible," she told Chen. "They just want everyone to think they are. Their exoskeletons are vulnerable to sonic weapons at specific frequencies. Their compound eyes cannot process certain light patterns, and their command structure completely breaks down if you kill the local hierarchy." This information changed everything. Chen incorporated Dr. Tanaka's knowledge into the Retribution's weapons and tactics. The next battles became even more one-sided. Over the following weeks, the Retribution struck again and again. A communication relay near the Horsehead Nebula, a fuel depot in the Outer Rim, a military academy on Zithar Minor. Each attack was surgical and devastating. Each attack freed slaves and destroyed military capability. But Chen also noticed something changing in his crew. They were becoming colder, more mechanical. The neural mesh that connected them made them efficient, but it was also erasing their individuality. They thought as one weapon instead of 3,000 people. Commander Okonkwo approached him one night in his quarters. Through the neural mesh, he could feel her distress even before she spoke. "Captain, we need to talk about what we are becoming." Chen nodded. He had felt it too. "We are winning the war." "Yes, but at what cost?" "I can barely remember who I was before Kepler Station. I can barely remember being human. All I feel is anger and purpose. Is this what we wanted? To become the very monsters we are fighting against?" Chen had no answer. He knew she was right. They were transforming into weapons, losing the humanity they were fighting to avenge. But how could they stop? The Zetharians would not stop until humanity was extinct. We finish the mission, Chen said quietly. We end the Zitharian threat. Then we figure out if we can come back from this. Okonkwo left his quarters, but Chen could still feel her doubt through the neural mesh, and he could feel the same doubt spreading through the entire crew. They were winning every battle, but losing something essential in the process. Meanwhile, the galaxy watched in amazement and horror. The Zitharian Empire, which had dominated for thousands of years, was being systematically dismantled by a single human ship. Species that had been conquered centuries ago began to rebel. Pirates and rebels struck at Zitharian supply lines. The empire was crumbling. Empress Krixala sat in her throne room, surrounded by her advisors. They were discussing strategies, but she could see the fear in their compound eyes. They had never faced an enemy like this before. An enemy that struck without warning. An enemy that seemed to know their every move. An enemy driven by something the Zitharians did not understand, the need to protect their young. We must negotiate, one advisor suggested. No, the Empress hissed. We do not negotiate with prey species. We are Zitharians. We have ruled the galaxy for millennia. We will not bow to these humans. Then what do you suggest, Empress? Krixala stood from her throne. We draw them to us. We make them attack Zythar Prime itself. And when they do, we will be ready. Every ship we have, every weapon we possess, we will drown them in our numbers. And if we fail, then the Zitharian Empire dies with honor. But we will not fail. Orders went out across Zitharian space. Every military ship was recalled to the home world. Every defensive platform was activated. Every soldier was put on high alert. The Zitharians were making their final stand. The journey to Zythar Prime took 2 weeks. Captain Chen used every hour to prepare his crew and his ship. They ran combat simulations constantly. They analyzed every piece of intelligence about the Zitharian homeworld. They tested new weapons that Dr. Tanaka had designed based on her knowledge of Zitharian biology. But Chen also spent time talking to his crew individually. The neural mesh allowed them to work as one mind during combat, but Chen needed them to remember they were still individuals. Still human. He needed them to hold on to whatever pieces of their souls remained. Tell me about your life before the war, he would ask each crew member who came to his office. Some struggled to remember. The neural mesh and the constant combat had blurred their memories. But slowly they would recall small details. A favorite food, a childhood pet, a dream they once had. Chen encouraged them to hold on to these memories no matter how small. We are fighting to protect humanity, he told them. But if we lose our humanity in the process, what are we protecting? Meanwhile, Earth was not idle. Admiral Vasquez had assembled a fleet. It was not large by galactic standards, only 30 ships. But each one was equipped with the best technology humanity could build. And more importantly, each ship was crewed by people who remembered Kepler Station. We cannot let the Retribution face the entire Zitharian Empire alone, Vasquez told her commanders, even if it means we all die trying. The fleet departed Earth with quiet determination. No celebrations, no grand speeches, just grim-faced humans heading to what might be their final battle. But humanity's fleet was not the only one heading to Zythar Prime. Across the galaxy, something unexpected was happening. Species that had suffered under Zytharian rule for centuries were mobilizing their own ships. They were pirates, rebels, freed slaves, and desperate people who saw humanity's war as their chance for liberation. The Kalrathi sent 15 ships, all that remained of their once proud navy. The Valorak sent mining vessels converted into warships. The Threnodi sent ancient vessels they had kept hidden for generations. None of these ships were powerful individually, but together they represented something the galaxy had not seen in millennia: unity against the Zitharians. Chen watched the tactical displays as more ships appeared on the edge of the system. He had not asked for help. He had not expected it, but here they were. Dozens of species ready to fight alongside humanity. Captain, we are receiving hundreds of communication requests, the communications officer reported. Every ship wants to coordinate their attack with us. Chen felt something he had not felt in months. Hope. They were not alone anymore. He opened a general communication channel. This is Captain Marcus Chen of the UESS Retribution. To all ships heading to Zythar Prime, we did not ask you to join this fight, but we are honored to have you beside us. Today we are not humans or Kalrathi or Veloraks. Today we are free people fighting against tyranny. Remember what the Zetharians took from you, and make them pay for every drop of blood." A cheer went up across hundreds of ships in dozens of languages. For the first time, the prey were hunting the predator. Zethar Prime appeared on the tactical displays. The planet was beautiful in a harsh way: purple oceans and dark continents, 3 moons orbiting in perfect mathematical precision, and surrounding it all was the largest military force Chen had ever seen. 300 Zetharian warships hung in space like a wall of metal and death. Orbital weapon platforms dotted the defensive sphere. Shield generators on the planet's surface created layers of protection. Empress Crixilla had gathered every military asset the Empire possessed. "Intelligence update," Okonkwo reported. "They have positioned their ships in a traditional defensive formation. Multiple layers with overlapping fields of fire. Very efficient. Very Zetharian. Which means it is predictable," Chen replied. "They still do not understand how we think." Admiral Vasquez's fleet arrived first, taking position near a gas giant in the outer system. The Allied ships gathered around them. It was not a proper fleet. It was a collection of desperate people in mismatched vessels. But there were over 200 ships total. Not enough to match the Zetharians in firepower, but enough to tip the balance. Vasquez opened a private channel to Chen. "Captain, are you sure about this plan? Once we commit, there is no retreat." "I am sure, Admiral. The Zetharians expect us to fight them conventionally. They expect us to charge their defenses and break against them. We will do the opposite. We will make them come to us. And if it does not work," Chen smiled grimly, "then we die. But we die making them pay for Kepler Station." The battle plan was audacious and completely insane. Instead of attacking the Zetharian fleet, humanity's forces would attack the planet itself. They would bombard the surface, target cities, destroy infrastructure. They would force the Zetharians to leave their perfect defensive formation and chase the attackers. It was the kind of brutal strategy that the Concordat would condemn. It was the kind of attack that would make humans look like monsters. But Chen remembered Kepler Station, remembered the Zetharians firing on schools and hospitals. They had started this type of warfare. Humanity was just finishing it. The attack began at dawn on Zethar Prime. The Retribution dropped its stealth field right above the capital city. It fired a single plasma lance at the planetary shield generator. The shield flickered and died. Then hell arrived. Hundreds of ships poured into the atmosphere. They were not military vessels. They were civilian ships, cargo haulers, mining ships. They carried no powerful weapons. But they carried rocks, asteroids, chunks of ice and metal. And they dropped this cargo on Zetharian cities from orbit. The kinetic bombardment was devastating. Buildings crumbled. Infrastructure collapsed. Millions of Zetharian civilians ran for shelters. The planet that had been safe for thousands of years was suddenly under attack. Empress Crixalla watched from her palace as fire rained from the sky. She felt rage so intense it made her mandibles click rapidly. How dare they attack the homeworld? Send all ships to protect the planet. Kill them all. The Zetharian fleet broke formation. 300 warships surged forward to protect their home. This was exactly what Chen had hoped for. "Now," he ordered, "activate the trap." The Allied fleet had not been idle. While the civilian ships attacked the planet, military vessels had been placing mines throughout the system, not normal mines. These were singularity devices. Each one could create a tiny black hole that lasted only seconds. But those seconds were enough. The Zetharian fleet flew directly into the minefield. Dozens of black holes appeared simultaneously. Ships were torn apart by gravitational forces. Some collided with each other trying to avoid the traps. The perfect military formation became chaos, and then the Retribution attacked in earnest. The human warship moved through the Zetharian fleet like a sword through silk. Its plasma lances fired constantly, each shot destroying or crippling a target. Its singularity torpedoes created pockets of destruction. And all the while, it broadcast Dr. Tanaka's sonic weapons on frequencies that caused Zetharian nervous systems to malfunction. Admiral Vasquez's fleet joined the battle, 30 human ships against hundreds of Zetharians. They should have been overwhelmed in minutes. But human tactics were not about matching firepower. They were about exploiting weaknesses and creating chaos. Human ships moved in unpredictable patterns. They fired and then retreated. They used the debris from destroyed vessels as cover. They coordinated through quantum communication that the Zetharians could not intercept. Every advantage of human creativity was used to counter Zetharian numbers. The Allied ships fought with desperate courage. Many were destroyed in the first minutes of combat, but each lost ship took a Zetharian vessel with it. The Kalrathi rammed their ships into Zetharian cruisers. The Valorax used their mining lasers to cut through enemy hulls. Every species fought with everything they had. Chen watched the battle through the neural mesh. He could feel his crew working in perfect synchronization. He could feel the retribution responding to his thoughts before he even spoke orders. Ship and crew had become one weapon, but he could also feel something else. The cost of this power. His crew was losing more of their humanity with every minute of combat. They were becoming pure violence, pure efficiency. They were becoming exactly what they hated about the Zetharians. "Captain, we are breaking through to the palace," Okonkwo shouted. "We have a clear shot at Empress Krixala." This was the moment Chen had been fighting toward for months. The chance to kill the being who had ordered the destruction of Kepler Station. The chance to make her pay for every human life lost. His finger hovered over the firing control. One button press, one singularity torpedo, and the Empress would be erased from existence. Through the neural mesh, he felt his crew urging him to fire, felt their need for vengeance, felt their rage demanding satisfaction. But he also felt something else. A small voice in his mind. It sounded like his sister, the teacher who had read stories to children, the woman who had believed in peace and understanding. "If you do this," the voice whispered, "you become what they are. You become the monster." Chen's hand shook. Around him, the battle raged. Ships exploded. People died. And he had the power to end it all with one shot. The Empress must have known she was targeted. She opened a communication channel directly to the Retribution. The war ended not with fire, but with paperwork. Diplomats and lawyers from dozens of species descended on Zethar Prime to negotiate the details of surrender. It took 3 months to work out all the terms. 3 months of arguments and compromises, but slowly a new order emerged from the ashes of the old empire. Captain Chen watched from the Retribution as Zetharian ships were dismantled. The Empire's military was reduced to a small defensive force. Conquered territories were granted independence. Slave colonies were liberated, and Empress Krixala was taken into custody to await trial for her crimes. "It feels strange," Commander Okonkwo said, standing beside Chen on the observation deck. "We spent so long fighting. Now we have to figure out what peace looks like." Chen nodded. Peace felt uncomfortable after months of war. The neural mesh still connected him to his crew, but the constant combat readiness had faded. Slowly, they were rediscovering their individual identities. It was painful and difficult, like learning to walk again after an injury. Admiral Vasquez arrived on the Retribution for an inspection. She looked older, more tired. The war had aged everyone involved. She walked through the corridors talking to crew members, thanking them for their service. When she reached Chen's office, she sat down heavily in a chair. "The politicians are arguing about what to do with you in this ship. Some want to make you a hero. Some want to hide you away because you scare them. What do you want, Admiral?" Vasquez was quiet for a moment. "I want my daughter back. I want my grandchildren to grow up and have children of their own. I want the last 6 months to have been a bad dream." She looked up at Chen with tired eyes. "But since I cannot have any of that, I want to make sure their deaths meant something." They did. "The Zetharians will never threaten anyone again, and the galaxy knows that humanity will protect its own." "At what cost, Captain?" "Look at your crew. Look at yourself. You are not the same people who left Earth. The neural mesh, the constant combat, the things you had to do. Can you ever go back to being normal humans?" Chen did not have an answer. He had asked himself the same question every night. The neural mesh could be removed, but the memories would remain. The things they had done. The lives they had taken. The line they had crossed between defenders and destroyers. "I do not know," he admitted, "but we will try." The trial of Empress Krixala became the most watched event in galactic history. It took place on a neutral station, with judges from 50 different species. The Empress sat in a containment field, her insectoid body still and proud despite her circumstances. The charges were read: genocide, war crimes, crimes against sentient beings. The evidence was overwhelming. Video footage from Kepler Station, testimony from survivors, records from the Zetharian military itself. Sarah Mitchell, the commander who had survived Kepler Station, gave testimony. She described watching the station break apart, described losing her husband and daughter, described floating in an escape pod for 3 days surrounded by the dead. The courtroom was silent when she finished. Even the Zitharian observers clicked their mandibles in what might have been shame. The Empress was given a chance to speak in her defense. She stood in her containment field and addressed the court. I am guilty of the charges. I gave the order to destroy Kepler Station. I believed it was necessary to protect my empire from a future threat. I was wrong. Her mechanical translation carried no emotion, but somehow her words felt sincere. I have learned something from the humans. I learned that strength is not just military power. True strength is the ability to show mercy when you have the power to destroy. The humans showed me this mercy when they could have exterminated my entire species. I can only hope that this mercy extends to justice rather than revenge. The judges deliberated for 3 days. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all charges. The sentence was life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 50 years. She would spend the rest of her long life in confinement, thinking about the millions who had died because of her decisions. As the Empress was led away, she paused and looked directly at Sarah Mitchell. I am sorry, she said simply. I know these words cannot undo what I have done, but I needed to say them. Sarah nodded but said nothing. Some wounds could never heal with words. The Galactic Concordat was reformed with new rules and new leadership. Humanity was given a permanent seat on the Security Council. Other species that had been conquered by the Zitharians were also given seats. The new council had a simple principle. The strong would protect the weak, not exploit them. Earth's representatives helped draft a new treaty. It was called the Kepler Doctrine. The core principle was simple. Any attack on civilians of any species would be met with the full military force of the Concordat. No more would the galaxy allow genocide to go unpunished because the perpetrator was too powerful. Ambassador Williams stood before the Concordat Assembly to present the doctrine. We learned a hard lesson. We learned that peace maintained through fear and appeasement is no peace at all. We learned that sometimes you must be willing to fight for what is right, even when the cost is terrible. The Kepler Doctrine is not about revenge. It is about ensuring that what happened to Kepler Station never happens to anyone, anywhere, ever again. The doctrine passed with overwhelming support. Species that had been too afraid to oppose the Zitharians now found their voice. The galaxy was changing, not quickly and not easily, but changing nonetheless. The retribution itself became a symbol. The ship was too powerful to simply destroy, but it was also too dangerous to leave operational. After much debate, it was decided to convert the ship into a memorial and museum. Chen stood on the bridge one last time before the conversion began. The neural mesh had been disconnected. The weapons had been removed. The quantum stealth field had been deactivated. It was just a ship now, not a weapon, not an instrument of vengeance. Just metal and circuits. Do you think we did the right thing? Okonkwo asked. I think we did what we had to do. Whether it was right, history will decide. The crew of the Retribution was disbanded. Some returned to military service on normal ships. Some retired to civilian life. Some struggled to adjust to a world without constant combat. Earth provided counseling and support, but the transition was hard. Chen himself retired to a small house near the mountains. He spent his days hiking and reading. He avoided news about the war. He avoided interviews and public appearances. He just wanted to be Marcus Chen again, not Captain Chen of the legendary Warship. But sometimes, late at night, he could still feel the neural mesh. Could still feel the connection to his crew. Could still feel the weight of the decisions he had made, the lives he had taken, the line between justice and revenge that he had walked so carefully. A memorial was built at the ruins of Kepler Station. It was a beautiful structure made of crystal and steel, floating in space where the station had once been. On the walls were inscribed the names of all 2.3 million people who had died. Sarah Mitchell attended the dedication ceremony. She placed flowers at her husband's name and her daughter's name. Then she sat and looked out at the stars. I hope it was worth it, she whispered to the names on the wall. I hope the galaxy learned something from your deaths. The galaxy did learn. In the years that followed, the Kepler Doctrine was invoked 3 times. Each time, the Concordat responded with overwhelming force against those who attacked civilians. Each time, the aggressors were stopped before they could cause mass casualties. Humanity's reputation changed. They were no longer seen as a harmless young species. They were respected, feared, admired. Other species studied human military tactics, studied human psychology, tried to understand what made humans so dangerous when threatened. But humans also became known for something else. Mercy, justice, the willingness to spare an enemy who surrendered. These qualities were rare in the galaxy. Most species fought to total victory or total destruction. Humans fought until their enemy surrendered, then helped them rebuild. Dr. Tanaka continued her work in xenobiology, but now she focused on using her knowledge to help different species understand each other. She traveled the galaxy, teaching about the importance of empathy and communication. She never forgot her time as a Zetharian prisoner, but she chose to use that experience to prevent future conflicts. Admiral Vasquez died 5 years after the war ended. She was given a military funeral with full honors. Her coffin was launched into space near the Kepler Memorial. Thousands of people attended the ceremony, including many aliens who had fought alongside humanity. At her funeral, Chen spoke briefly. Admiral Vasquez lost everything she loved at Kepler Station. She could have chosen revenge. She could have ordered us to exterminate the Zetharians, but she chose justice instead. She chose to end the war in a way that would prevent future wars. That is her legacy, not the battles we won, but the peace we achieved. 10 years after the war, a young Zetharian student visited the Retribution Museum. She walked through the corridors that had once carried a crew bent on destroying her species. She looked at the weapons that had shattered the Zetharian Empire. She read the plaques that explained each battle. At the end of the tour, she stood before a display showing images from Kepler Station, pictures of the families who had lived there, children playing,